Hi everyone. Today I wanted to talk about triggers in relationships. Many times when we think about triggers, there's this myth that we have that we should not be triggered. That at some point we're going to do so much inner work that triggers are not going to be there anymore. And in this video, I want to explain how this myth is false and why it is false, because I'll explain what a trigger really is. And I'll also show you how to use triggers in a way that actually benefits your relationships, the relationship you have with other people and with yourself, right? So, first of all, when you think about triggers, what I want you to realize is when you are triggered, what is actually happening inside of you is that there is a part in you that you don't know, that is unconscious, that is separated from you, that through that relationship that you had, through that interaction that you had, that part just came up into your awareness. It came up into daylight, from night to daylight, right? And so when you get triggered, what happens in that moment as that part comes up, usually the first thing you will feel is resistance, right? Resistance, fear, separation. Fear is separation. Resistance is separation. You're feeling that because that part is separated from you. You don't know it. You're not aware of it. So you're like this, right? And the whole idea is for that part to go from separation to be included. So it's very normal that you feel that separation. That's how that part feels. The second thing that you may feel is that in that moment you feel small and overwhelmed by everything, right? It's almost like that trigger feels like you can't make it. Even a part of you will start saying things like, I'm going to die. I mean, it's too much. I can't make it, etc., etc., right? And again, if you are feeling that way, it's because it's like your consciousness, your attention, your consciousness has completely been hijacked by that little part. So you do feel small. You're not aware of yourself. You don't know anything about you. You don't know anything about the outside. It's like a hatchling that just started, coming out from its mother's womb or whatever. So it's very normal that you feel small and overwhelmed, right? And so when in that moment, so it's and the amazing part is that you completely become that part, right? It's amazing because if you realize in that moment your consciousness can be this small and this big, right? And in that moment it becomes that part. So you're actually you're experiencing utterly that part. And if in that moment you're experiencing that part, maybe that's exactly the way it should be, right? Because it's happening. And as you experience it, now automatically what happens is that you start knowing the feeling of overwhelm, of fear, of everything that is coming up. And as you know that, slowly, and you let that experience happen, slowly what happens is that part integrates and becomes part of you. So what that means is that every time you are triggered, it's a part of you that you don't know that is coming up. And in that moment, you're actually expanding. You're getting more power. You are getting more, you're starting to get more about yourself, right? And in order to do that, you need to become that small part, to know it very well, and then the integration happens because now you know it, now you've lived it out, you've experienced it, now it's a part of you, you integrate it, and you know yourself that much better. And so it's amazing to be triggered when you know this. And so suddenly, when you start realizing that, there are all these people around you, or or experiences, or even trees, whatever it is, all these relationships that actually trigger you. And so they bring out parts of you that you don't know. When you realize that, you have a completely different relationship to triggers. And so, for example, in my case, with people that I know that are very close to me, the word trigger is a very natural word. It's something that we use on a daily basis, a lot. And it's okay to say, I'm triggered by you, or I'm triggered by what you said, by what you did, I'm triggered by this word. And the other person can say that. And, it becomes natural because I know how much I can expand through triggers. I know how those triggers, the effect they have on my life, and how rich they make it. And not only my life, but that relationship. So for example, you're talking to someone, and so you're having that interaction with that person. It's like it's two energies coming together, right? And as these two energies come together, there is tension that will come up because there is these parts that are coming up. Through every relationship, you really get to know yourself more and more, right? And so as these tensions and triggers come up, if you are aware of the fact that a trigger is actually beneficial, a trigger is there to help you understand yourself more and to empower you. As these triggers come up, you will include them in the interaction. And what happens is that as you include them in your interaction becomes very deep. Your interaction with that person becomes very nourishing and very safe. Safe, why? Because that person is letting you become the best version of you. That person is okay for you to be triggered through them, through that interaction, and let you just expand. And they'll be there for you so that, you can go through that. There's a moment of that is tumultuous, right? So there's a moment that you feel overwhelmed and all that. And you can go through that with the other person. And the same goes with them, right? And as I said before, the more you do that, the more, number one, safe, and then it becomes nourishing. It becomes deep. That relationship becomes nourishing and deep. Why? Because suddenly it's like you start exploring each other. Suddenly it's like these unknown parts. It becomes this adventure between you two and together that you're taking together. And so it stops being there's so many relationships that are so superficial, and we're always talking about other people, about something out there, etc. And we don't talk about ourselves. We don't enter into ourselves. And so then, there's that lack of depth that feels like a void. And then no wonder, there's always some kind of addiction that comes up when there are interactions, like when there are when people are gathering together. But when you start really including these triggers and talking about them and letting them unfold moment by moment, it's amazing how deep it becomes. It's amazing how the knowledge that other person saw parts of you that you wouldn't show you usually don't want to show because you think you think that they're not acceptable. And then you find this person with whom you can actually get triggered, be okay, and be, show those parts that are not theoretically acceptable, and see that they completely take you in as you are. When you see that, it's pure bliss. I mean, it's pure. There's nothing more you'll want in this life. And we have so little of that in so many relationships, right? So again, that's why triggers are so important. And triggers, when I say triggered, I'm not saying that suddenly something comes up, you get angry or whatever, and you just throw that emotion, throw that whatever it is that you're feeling on the other person. What I'm saying is that in that moment, when it comes up, you take ownership of it. And how do you do that? Number one, you become aware of it. You become honest in that moment. You become vulnerable. Which means that in that moment, you start by saying, you know what? I'm confused in this moment. I'm going through confusion. I don't know what is happening. I feel angry, or whatever it is. And let's just take a little bit of time here to go through it. Can you be there with me, right? Because, the other person may not want to do that, because some people will not. But some people will love doing that. And it's like that other person just becomes a presence, they just sit there. They're not there to tell you what to do, but they're just there. They take ownership of themselves. So they go into their body, they ground themselves there, and they see what happens in them as your trigger comes up, right? Because they may be triggered also in that moment. And it's really about being honest, and it's about letting that trigger express itself, open up, not dump it on the other person, right? And so you can start really describing what is happening in your body. Maybe there's tension. Maybe there is, a feeling of cold. You feel very cold in that moment. And you're trying to just make it, when you describe the sensations that are happening in your body, you're being very detached. You're owning it, and at the same time, you're not putting labels on it. So that's a good way to start. And then you can say, I think this is what it means. I think there's a burning sensation, and I think I'm angry. And, maybe that anger started when I heard this word. And maybe, I don't know, I think I feel disempowered because of this, because of what we're talking about. And you let that trigger just talk through you. Maybe there's a memory that will come. It's not, you don't label it right away. You just become curious and let it talk. And so what you're doing in that moment is that you're opening up to the other person. You're showing yourself as you are. You are standing by you. You do not betray yourself by saying, I'm triggered. Now I'll just act as if everything is okay. Because that's literally seen as betrayal. Because a part of you is trying to come up and you're saying, no, go down, right? You're not worthy of this. You shouldn't be here. And so, and you let it unfold, and then you see, because what happens in that moment is that as you're growing together with that other person, it's like that relationship becomes smoother. It's like, when I say smoother, the sailing becomes smoother. Because sometimes, you'll find yourself that relationship needs to end. And you'll be okay with that. Even though, you may feel sad or whatever, of course, that may happen. But it's like you're not going to hold on to the other person because you don't feel safe, because regrets, because of obligation, because of shoulds and shouldn'ts. But you let yourself be yourself and you let the other person be them. And every one of us has a path to walk on. And some people are on this path for a while and some people for longer. And there is a time, there's a perfect timing for that. And so when you are completely yourself in that moment, and when you let the other person be that, by letting them be triggered, by letting yourself be triggered, you let that smooth sailing happen. And if something needs to end, it will end. And if something needs to continue, it will continue. But it's going to be very natural. And you'll be connected. And you'll start becoming more and more intuitive. And you'll start going towards relationships that will nourish you, that will give you the depth that you need. Because that's what you're also offering yourself. So let me stop here. Let me just wrap it up and say that a trigger is not bad. A trigger is a part of you that you don't know that is trying to come out into the light. Which means that it's a moment where you will expand. You will know more about yourself. You'll know more about the universe. You'll have more power. You'll start becoming more discerning. There's a lot that you gain from that. And you'll start becoming safer in yourself. And so when you start realizing that, it will be very natural for you to be okay with your triggers, and it will be very natural for you to let other people be triggered even by you. Because you know what that means for them. And then, when the trigger comes up in relationships, there is a way to deal with it. Just stay in your body, feel into it, become curious, and explore that trigger with the other person. And it's just amazing how safe it will make you feel in this life, how safe you're going to be with other people, for other people, and with yourself. So I hope it's clear. If you have any questions, any comments, let me know down below. If you want to personally work with on triggers with me, then there's a link down below. And see you in my next video.